if you're not married, you're already a failure, you're already a left behind woman, you're not pretty enough, there's something wrong with you, there's an evil spirit bothering you. Yeah, you're possessed by an evil spirit, and that's why you haven't been able to get married by the age of 17. It's ridiculous. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Dr. Zane, and on this channel I make videos that help us become better versions of ourselves and of our mental health. So if that sounds like your thing, please make sure you subscribe right now and give this video a big thumbs up, because I already know you're going to enjoy it. So in a recent video I talked about Trevor Noah and his unmarried status at the age of 40, and how he spoke about being single shamed and being called a loser by people despite all his achievements in life. And I got a bunch of interesting responses, and I just want to talk about some of your comments in this video and offer my views, because I recognize some of those comments. I recognize the sentiments behind some of those comments, and I just see many of them as a representation of the way people think about people who are single past a certain age in society. Somebody said folk need to mind their own business. I agree with you. But unfortunately, the nature of human beings is that they will never mind their own business, which is why we keep talking about it, and which is why we will never shut up about it. You know, mind your own business. But I already explained in that video sufficiently why many people will never mind their own business when it comes to this issue. So, yeah. Another comment is marriage for everyone. Why are there divorces? And then they put ignorant people. Yeah, many people who come at you asking when I getting married and trying to single shame you despite all your accomplishments in life, as if you're not married you failed at life. Those people are many times ignorant, okay, many times very ignorant, because they think they can think, they see why you should be married, but actually they don't know half of what they think they know. Okay, they're not deep thinkers, because if they were deep thinkers they would understand that marriage is indeed not for everyone. And when people do not think about the institution of marriage and the responsibilities that come with marriage more than they think of the pleasures that are associated with the institution of marriage, what happens is that they end up oppressing themselves, and they end up oppressing their partners, and they end up oppressing the poor innocent children that they bring into this world. And what happens is that you will now have a whole generation of people as adults who are trying to distance themselves from their parents, who are trying to remove their parents' last names from their names as soon as they get to adulthood, who are spending a lot of money and energy and effort and time to heal from the trauma that they experienced in childhood, trauma that was brought upon them by the way their parents brought them up, by the way their parents treated them, by the neglect and in very many cases the abuse that they experienced at the hands of parents who were children themselves. Even if they were physically mature, even if they had aged, they were children in the sense that if you're not grown here, many people are grown physically but they're not grown here, and they are children. And you have children having and raising children, and they end up just messing up those children. All right, so marriage is not for everyone, and those who recognize it are the ones who are like, I'm not ready for this kind of responsibility, I'm not ready for this kind of life, so I'm going to delay it to a time when I think I'm going to be ready, or I'm just even going to choose not to go into that whole thing because I don't want to hurt myself, I don't want to hurt other people, and I do not want to bring children into this life that I'm going to end up hurting. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Marriage is not for everyone. I believe that's one of the reasons people have divorces. There are just so many divorces in this today, and you would wonder why that is. And people keep getting married and they keep getting divorced. And you're like, okay, so why did you end up getting married if you knew you were going to get divorced? But they did not know they were going to get divorced. They thought it was all going to be rosy. They entered this institution thinking they wanted this, they were going to get this from their partner, but they did not think of the responsibilities. They did not think of those things, because again, being in love is like being obsessed, and when you're obsessed you have chemicals in your brain just modeling up your thought process. It's almost like being on drugs. People don't think about compatibility, people don't think about responsibilities, people don't think about how they are ready for those responsibilities and how they would have to make adjustments and compromises and just alter their entire lifestyles when they enter into this alliance. People don't think of those things, and you cannot come as a society, as a culture, and impose that on people. You cannot impose that on people at all, and you cannot even impose that on people by a certain age, as if it's something that if you don't do this by this age then you are failed at life. That's ridiculous. Okay, that's very ridiculous. And that brings me to my next comment. In many cultures they encourage marriage by your 30s at latest. Why should it be by your 30s at latest. Who said that you have to be married by 30? Who said so? Because during the time of our great-grandparents, they were getting married at the age of 15. And then if you were not, in fact, they would not even allow you to get past the age of 15, 16 before they got you married. They would marry you off. Okay, so then they had to get married by the age of 15, 16, 18 latest. And the time of our parents came and they said, okay, they had to get married by the age of 20, 25. And if you were past 25 and you were not married, they would call you a loser. And now people are like, oh, 30. So why do the ages keep changing? If it's something that is a standard that human beings have to go by, otherwise they would have failed. Why does that standard keep shifting? Why? It's shifting because of a lot of things. It's shifting because culture is actually responding to the needs of people and to the reality on the ground. Like the time of our parents and our grandparents, they were able to get settled financially at a much earlier age. But now it's not that way. You have to hustle. Okay, you have to hustle, and people are still hustling. By 30, they're still hustling. 35, they're still hustling. So things are shifting, which is why society keeps shifting that age. But my point here is the time by which you would be mentally mature, intellectually mature, financially ready, emotionally mature for these things, for the responsibilities that come with marriage, keeps shifting forward as time goes by. That is the truth. Okay, so let's get that thing out of our minds that by 30, you have to get married. By 25 you have to get married. Like, it's ridiculous. I said in the last video, like, here in some parts of the world, by 19, 20, if you're not married, people are like, oh my god, you're already old, oh my god, this is a disaster, we have to get you married. Yeah, da, 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 da. Some places by 17, if you're not married, you're already a failure, you're already a left behind woman, you're not pretty enough, there's something wrong with you, there's an evil spirit bothering you. Yeah, you're possessed by an evil spirit, and that's why you haven't been able to get married by the age of 17. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And people need to just remove that kind of ridiculous thinking out of their psyches. So another interesting comment. Somebody said, I'm not married and I'm older. Lots of married people are most unserious as they have multiple affairs. That is true. And that goes back to my earlier point about how people enter into marriages without thinking about the responsibilities and without thinking about certain restrictions that come with the institution of marriage. And they end up, hurting themselves and hurting their partners. And because they're unhappy in their marriages, they resort to having affairs because they're not honest enough to say this isn't working for me, or because, there are financial implications of breaking up the marriage, or because they don't have the guts to get a divorce because they are in societies where people will humiliate you if you break up your marriage. Okay, apart from people talking, they will actually humiliate you. Like in some societies, they will count for you. Like they'll be like, oh, she got married to that husband, he was from this house, and then they got divorced, and then they'll say he kicked her out, or they'll say she left him because she can't sit down in one person's house, she can't stick with one husband because she's cursed. So she was married to that man, and then she got married to that man, and then she got married to that man, and now she's on her 4th husband, and she has 6 children from her first husband, but she keeps carrying her 6 children everywhere she goes. And then they will shame the man who married her with her. Can you imagine that man marrying this woman who is a divorcee, 3 times divorcee with 6 children? Can you imagine? Shameless man. He wants to kill himself. He doesn't know the curse she's carrying around. They will literally talk like that. Literally. And then if it's the man, they'll be like, oh, there's something wrong with him. He must be cursed because no woman wants to stick with him. He was married before, and then he got married again, and that one left him, and then he got married again, and that one died, and then he got married again, and that one left him, and now he's on his 5th wife, and nobody wants to stay with him. This 5th wife is probably going to leave very soon. In fact, there are rumors that she's already, moving to another man, or some other man is moving to her, whatever. And they say all these humiliating, ridiculous things, and people don't want to experience all of that, so they just decide to stick to their miserable marriages and beat each other up every other night and scream down the entire neighborhood and rain, insults and curses on each other, and then they go and cheat and have multiple affairs, and they end up bringing all sorts of sexually transmitted infections and giving each other herpes and HIV/AIDS and all sorts of ridiculous things. Why do you have to bring that kind of problem on yourself? Just because you want to get married, just because you want to have somebody's last name, or just because you want to be able to say, oh, you are a serious man, because you were able to get married. Just because, many people do not even care about getting married. They are in marriages and so why did you even enter the marriage? If you don't want it, what are you looking for? Why do you have to torture yourself? Just because you don't have the guts to stand up to society. And this is somebody that said it in some interviews that he doesn't like living with people. He doesn't believe in living with people, which I must say, I know people do not agree with this, but I must say I actually agree with that to some extent. Who said you have to live together even after you're married? First of all, living together before you get married hasn't been working so far. Okay, just look around. You'll be dating, you'll be living together for 8 years, and then you get married, and within 1 year you're divorced. So why were you living together for 8 years? What were you doing? Right? It doesn't work. It does not work. Again, if you want to insult me, please go ahead and insult me. I'll just remove your comment and report it to YouTube. I don't have time. This one's actually, she was like, this person, I don't know if it's a she. This person said, I have the same mindset and I appreciate your maturity. I had never considered that hormones could blur my vision. I only thought about the influence of my lover's speech on me when I was at a younger age. And this is very true, because I mentioned something relating to that in that video. That, when you're in love, your brain is literally inundated with chemicals and hormones, and you're not able to think straight when it comes to that person. And so you're not able to think of things like compatibility, whether the relationship will work out, red flags when it comes to that person, and what you actually want from marriage, which is why you have to think about it before you decide to enter into that kind of alliance. Because once you meet somebody, then just kiss your common sense goodbye. And that's another reason why you also have to involve a third party. Traditionally, people have always involved third parties in getting people married, although you could make the argument that the family was actually the one that came to get their child married or whatever, and so they would involve a third party. But even now, when you're the one in charge of that kind of arrangement for yourself, then it's a good idea to involve a third party, just to, whether it's a coach or a counselor or a therapist, somebody, so that person can come ask you questions, ask them questions, ask you to do take a few compatibility tests, take a few courses, stuff like that, just so you guys somebody can help you, somebody who is not involved in that union between you two, and who is removed from the pheromones and the hormones and all the chemicals, who will be able to apply common sense in that kind of situation before you take the plunge. It's a huge undertaking, and people take it far too lightly than they should. And again, the society is one that suffers the effect that marriage is not a dancing party where you have to hurry to get to. And then they made an analogy between getting married and having COVID, and why should you hustle to have COVID? I don't know. I don't know if I agree with marriage being like getting COVID, because I think marriage would be a lot more fun, at least for a while, before things go awry, as it does in many cases. I do find it an interesting analogy, very interesting. It made me laugh. But the thing is, you are completely right. Marriage is not a dancing party, and this is something that we've been screaming for a very long time for people to get into their minds. Marriage is not a dancing party that you have to hurry to get into. We know people who have hurried into it and who have hurried out back. Okay, we know people who 6 months they're divorced, 1 year they're divorced, 2 years at the latest they're divorced, and now things are much worse for them than they were before they got married. And the things that they thought marriage was going to solve for them, those problems actually doubled, tripled in some cases, because now they have other responsibilities that have been added onto them before that were not there before they got married. It's not something you have to rush into. It's not a tea party. It's not a dancing party. It is not something you rush into. If you rush in, you will rush out. And that is the truth. Now one very sad comment I saw, which I thought I should respond to, because it's, I mean, I do see that kind of thought process, but I genuinely, for the life of me, do not understand why people would choose to think like that. And I'm not taking shots at this person. I'm saying that the thought process, the idea itself, is a strange one to me, even though I'm familiar with it. If people need to be prepared to have kids or get married, then Trevor Noah himself would not even exist in the first place. And it's a bit of a shame. By this comment you are mentioning, you are referring to the fact that Trevor Noah talks about how his birth itself was a crime, and because during the apartheid in South Africa, whites were not supposed to get married to blacks, and it was a crime. So the children he gave birth to were a crime. First of all, a child can never ever be a crime. A child's a beautiful creation, innocent of all crimes. Maybe their parents committed crimes, maybe, which again is ridiculous to say that one person cannot be with another person because of some arbitrary division that you've created because of your superiority based on the color of your skin and all of that. Let's not even go into all of that, so that we won't sleep here. But I really do not think that it should be brought into this conversation. Okay, I do not think that it should be brought into this conversation. But we could actually flip that and say that the fact that he experienced that kind of discrimination right from his birth might have also shaped his thinking, and realizing that children do suffer sometimes the consequences of their parents' actions, especially because of the kind of society we find ourselves in. If your parents do not find a way to be financially stable in today's society before getting married, before having you, then you will suffer the consequences of that poverty. Your parents did not get married before they had children, and that society is very, is a society that is firm, deeply rooted in traditional values such as getting married before getting, children. They might actually term the child illegitimate, which is, again, absolutely ridiculous. No child can ever be illegitimate because he did not have sex. His parents did. Okay, so I don't know why you would blame the child for what the parents did. But anyway, again, let's not go into it. In a society like that, they might actually term the child illegitimate, and so everybody would mock that child, and that child will suffer the consequences of their parents' actions. So it could be that coming from that kind of his background, he understands more than most people that a child can suffer the consequences of their parents' actions, and he doesn't want his own offsprings, if he's going to have them, to suffer the consequences of his own maybe just rash behavior, or his own lack of thinking, or lack of reasoning, or lack of planning, or lack of being ready for being a parent, because he understands some of those consequences. That might have been something that influences thinking, which is a good thing in my opinion, because different people have different experiences in life, and your experiences are supposed to shape your thinking and to shape the way you build your life. And if you have certain experiences that other people do not have, and those experiences do not shape your thinking and help you become a thinker, or who thinks in a clearer way, in a deeper way than many other people, then what was the point of having that experience? Especially if it was a painful experience, what was the point? What was the point? I do believe strongly that people have to plan and be ready to get married. Marriage is not a dancing party. Marriage is something you have to plan for. You have to be ready. You have to be ready. Otherwise, we're not even going to go into the financial implications, or the stress on you and the stress on your family if you're broke. And I keep talking about this because poverty is a real problem in today's society, and especially in certain parts of the world, and it has to be taken seriously. Besides being mocked in school by your friends, being malnourished because your parents cannot afford a balanced meal even once in a day, we won't talk about that. We'll just talk about the fact that if you're not, let's say, emotionally ready or mentally ready, or you're still suffering from the trauma that you experienced in your own childhood because of your upbringing, and then you go ahead and have children and you transfer that trauma to them, then your child will end up having to work to heal from the trauma that you imposed on them. Either that, or your child will also transfer that trauma to the next generation. Okay, it's one of the two. So if you've become aware of something like that, then you should think, and you should plan, and you should make sure you're ready to be able to handle the responsibilities that come with marriage and the responsibilities that come with having children. So I really cannot see why you would blame a person and tell them they're a loser, and tell them they don't have to think about being prepared. What do you mean they should not be prepared? If you want to go on a road trip in a car, and you know that where you're going you might not see a filling station, will you not make sure you fill up your gas tank and make sure you have extra in a gallon in the boot just in case? Like, what are you talking about? If you want to cross the road, will you not look back, left and right, and look left again to make sure there are no cars coming before you cross? What do you mean? Is that not preparation? If you're going to take a walk into the bush, will you not put on proper boots to make sure that you don't get bitten by a snake if you wear slippers? Why not just take a walk into the bush barefooted and say you don't have to prepare? Otherwise, even if you prepare, you might get bitten. Or even if that's what some people say. Some people say you don't have to prepare. Some people say even if you prepare, your marriage can still fall apart. Yeah, even if you prepare, your marriage can still fall apart. Even if you prepare financially, you can still lose your job. Even if you prepare to cross the road, you can make sure there's no car coming, and then when you are crossing right in the middle, one car on high speed can come and do what it can do. That can happen. But in those cases, you would know that it is out of your hands. But if you do not prepare, then you are a very foolish person. I'm not talking about you who left the comment. Your brain is mature enough to understand that you have to take precautions in life, but you refuse to take precautions when it comes to this issue, then you are acting foolishly. And when you face the consequences, then, facing the consequences might actually help you to become more aware. Another comment which I saw was particularly long, and this person seemed quite passionate about it because they posted it twice. So they said that people wonder who will take care of you when you're old. People wonder who would make these medical decisions for you when you age, being alone. People wonder who will take care of your everyday needs when you're old. People, you know, when you're sick. But if you have a husband or a wife who is a caregiver, then that might help. And that, you know, being alone and aging is challenging. They also went on to say that, you know, some people might ask these questions because they could see single people as irresponsible when it comes to their well-being, because they're not thinking of what would happen to them when they get old and they don't have anyone to take care of them and their needs. And that, you know, single people should think about being childless and being unmarried and confronting aging alone. The thing is, first of all, somebody already gave a response to that, saying that what if that spouse leaves you and doesn't stick with you when you get old and you're sick? What then? What about the people who get divorced? What should they do? What about people who lose their spouses or who gets widowed? What should they do? In my opinion, I don't believe anybody should approach marriage or having children as a form of retirement plan or old age plan, such that somebody will take care of me, somebody will buy me groceries, somebody will cook for me, No. You are seeing that person as a tool. You are seeing that person as somebody you are going to use. You are not seeing that person as a real person, and that is the beginning of a lot of people's problems. That thinking itself is problematic, and it's something that a lot of people have, and it's something that we need to work to change. When you see people as a tool, it's a problem. When you see people as a tool, whether they're a child or they're an adult, you treat them the way you treat a tool. And that is where you become an oppressor. People are not tools. People are human beings. They have lives of their own. They deserve to be treated with the respect that deserves. There are different reasons people get married, okay? From the person who goes, I don't know, I'm just getting married because society says I should get married. That's what people do around me, and that's what I've always wanted to do because I've seen people doing it. To the person who actually thinks of why they should get married, and they actually have a pros and cons list about how, you know, this person can remind them to take their medicine when they are sick, and can be a companion for them, and can help them fulfill their needs, and, you know, they can have children and grow together, blah blah blah. To the person who thinks they are going to have a partner with whom they can go through this life and the next life. But there are some reasons that are you could say okay reasons, some praiseworthy reasons, but there are also some reasons that are selfish. Getting married because you want somebody to pay your bills, or you want somebody to take care of you when you're older, I think it would fall into the selfish category more than it would fall into the loving category. Again, that's just my opinion. I'm not saying there's something wrong with it. I'm saying it's a bit selfish. Your primary reason isn't that you want to show love to somebody. You have a lot of love to give. Your reason is that you want that person to do all the stuff for you. It's kind of similar to the people who have children because they think that their children are going to be their retirement plan. Because when they get old and they're not able to work anymore, who is going to take care of them financially? That is also very selfish, and we can see the repercussions of such a thinking. They end up hurting those children, they end up mistreating them, they end up traumatizing them, and those children, when they leave home, do not want anything to do with those parents. Even the ones that stick around because of the filial piety that they have and the sense of loyalty to family that they have, they continue experiencing that kind of torture. Those are the kinds of parents who would say your paycheck should come to me first. I'll give you the money to spend. I'll tell you how much to spend on your spouse. I'll tell you how much to spend on your children. If your child wants that new shoes, you have to ask me first if your child should have that pair of shoes or not. And why should this happen? Because I raised you, I took care of you, I spent all this money on you. And by the way, some people, they actually calculate how much money they spend on the child's schooling, the child's feeding, the child's upbringing for years. Some people actually do calculate that, and they have it on paper, and they're like, see how much I spent on you, you're going to pay me back. And even if you're not going to pay me back, then I should be in charge of your paycheck, right? That's the kind of mentality that comes with having children, because you want them to be your retirement plan, whether financially or in some other ways, like being a caregiver and all of that. If you don't approach having children with love primarily, wanting to show love primarily and not expecting anything back, then you might make a lot of mistakes. And by the way, even sometimes when you approach those relationships with just wanting to give love and not expecting anything back, things still do go wrong, okay? But they are more likely to go wrong when you approach that kind of, those kinds of relationships with things that you want to get. And this is something that people do not think about. People have to think about it. People really have to think about it. And this is something that a lot of people do think about, that makes them say, you know what, I don't think I'm capable for that kind of just giving, that kind of generosity now. I don't think my lifestyle allows me to give that much, so I'm going to hold off and wait. And people are like, I'm not the kind of person who can give like that at all, so I'm not even going to do it at all. African parents, look around you and see the way many of them treat their children, and you will know exactly what it means to be treated like a tool, right? To have parents treat their children like a tool just because they see them as their retirement plan. And many of those children are rebelling now. They're like, my parents see me as a retirement plan, I resent it. Some of them are like, yeah, they did all this for me, it's okay if they see me as a retirement plan, which, I guess is the right way to look at things, because, it's good to be grateful, and you should be willing to take care of your parents anyway. You should be willing to take care of your spouse anyway. But the parents themselves and the spouses themselves should not go into that kind of relationship thinking that this person is going to be useful for me, therefore I'm going to acquire them, or I'm going to be in a relationship with them. I think that is the wrong way to approach it. I'm going to go back to that other comment that said that what if the spouse isn't there in your old age? What if the spouse leaves when you're sick? What then? And that happens. I believe everybody should make plans for how, some of the decisions, medical decisions that they would want for themselves. They should think about those things. If they have, medical conditions already, if they have chronic conditions, if they have, if they're afraid of certain things that might happen to them in old age, then they should have, they should have plans for it. They should have preparations for it, and not just leave that, that decision to their loved ones to have to make. But sometimes some of these decisions are easier when they're made by the individual by themselves, rather than when they're left to the loved ones to have to make some decisions in some life-threatening situations, medical situations, etc., etc. So yeah, those are some of the comments that I saw that I found quite interesting. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video till the very end. If in fact you're still watching, I truly appreciate it. And if you've not subscribed, please make sure you subscribe right now. Give this video a big thumbs up and share it with anyone you know who might be interested or who might need to hear some of these things. Thank you once again, and I will see you next time.